Welcome to Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. Your Day with a Podcast brought to you by ConversCountyTourism.com. Feel the energy of Converse County. Explore Douglas's Railroad Heritage, Ayers Natural Bridge, and the Jackalope Legend. Glen Rock boasts scenic trails, dinosaur history, and small town charm. Plan your visit at ConversCountyTourism.com. Well, we're going to see a pattern similar today to what we had yesterday, as we have this Pacific front and trough coming on through very quickly, mainly affecting the northern areas with showers, but making everybody windy, making everybody a little bit cooler. This system, though, in and out in a blink of an eye. We have a break in the weather tomorrow and Friday. Tomorrow and Friday look superb. Beautiful spring weather, especially Friday. Temperatures will really rebound. But a frontal system will approach quickly this weekend. This will bring colder temperatures. It will bring showers again. The showers, there'll be a bias. The best chance of getting wet will be Montana, northern Wyoming, and North Dakota and South Dakota, and Saskatchewan and Manitoba and Alberta. Those areas are going to have the best chances of getting moisture. There's going to be some showers further south. It's just nothing to write home about. They're not going to really add up to very much. But boy, after a warm-up tomorrow, Friday, and a good part of Saturday for a lot of you will be very warm. But by Sunday and Monday, you'll notice it a lot colder, as some colder air will come in on the backside of that system. Now, in the longer term, you've heard me complaining here recently about the inability of the long-range modeling to really have any kind of consistent message. They've just been all over the place. Honestly, not really even usable. So do we have artificial intelligence, AI, or artificial confusion in the long term? So what I'm talking about here, I'll show you in a minute at the end of this podcast, is we've got some very different solutions between what we call the deterministic modeling and the AI modeling, which is trying to learn from mistakes in the past and kind of learn on maybe what the weather pattern will do instead of just using the deterministic situation with the model. But is it good AI or bad AI or somewhere in between? Don't know. Time will tell. Nice shot from the air there looking southwest of Livingston, Montana, where the snow has left the lower elevations and retreating up a little bit higher as we get warmer. Now, do you see a rainbow? If you look closely, you can see a very faint rainbow there just above the power lines right there from the shower activity in the Virga that went through northern Wyoming yesterday. Then classic lenticular clouds east of the Wind River Range near Lander there. Those lenticular clouds can span miles horizontally, north, south, and east, west if conditions are right, and we'll see more of that activity today. The surface map shows, again, a fairly quiet weather pattern for April. We've got some weather in the northeast. In fact, they're going to get some snow up here in New England, a real late season snow for them. Very cold in the northeast. Here's the next Pacific trough and front zipping across the area today. And the water vapor satellite imagery shows very well the flow of moisture in the mid and high levels and a strong jet stream wind associated with this ripple coming on through. High pressure over central California that's going to build and grow once all of this gets shoved off to the east. So you can see that flow matches very well what you see with the water vapor when we go to the 500 millibar chart following along the contour lines there. With the west-east flow perpendicular to the mountains, you know what that means. It's going to be windy. Here are the showers that are going to be noted basically through today. Nothing to write home about. Very dry across the southwestern United States. Very dry across this part of the region. All of the activity has a bias to the north. And today, those are the wind gusts. Now, these aren't crazy winds, but high-profile vehicles pulling trailers along I-80 and I-25 be ready for the wind. Again, nothing terribly strong. I call these nuisance winds, and they'll certainly be with us today and into the overnight hours. Then, by Friday, we've got this nice high pressure that comes in right behind it. More cold weather for the Great Lakes in the east, while we have a big warm-up. Air mass change. The air comes up out of the desert states right into the Rockies. Going to be a very warm, sunny Thursday and Friday. Make it tea time, especially on Friday. The next trough approaches, comes in from the Pacific Northwest. Ahead of it, though, look at the warmth on Friday. Desert air gets pushed all the way into Canada. So this is where you get a big warm up. But notice it's not warm for everybody. It's going to be pretty cold in the central and the east and the northeast. Cool weather comes into British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest with the next approaching trough. By Sunday morning, we have a strong low right along the U.S.-Canadian border. We're going to have a cold frontal boundary coming through the central and northern Rockies overnight Saturday into the day Sunday. So for a lot of you, a lot of Saturday is going to be nice, but you're going to see some shower activity developing ahead of this a little bit further back into these areas here as early as Saturday morning and the Saturday afternoon. Then overnight Saturday and the Sunday, this front comes through. Notice the wind direction change. We showed you this yesterday. Winds aloft come back in from the northwest. That draws in much colder air behind the system. Now, this is where the weather pattern stops becoming, well, at least reasonably predictable, as you'll see here in a moment. But we will see a colder shot Sunday and Monday. Some showers with this system. This is not a terribly moist system. It's basically bringing some moisture from up here, and there's just not a lot. The mountains are going to take a lot of it. But there will be a little bit of shower activity as it comes on by. By Monday morning, we see the low straight on the U.S.-Canadian border, the colder air, the trough, the front comes in on the backside and sends colder air south. So this is the moisture that's going to be associated with the system Saturday, Sunday into Monday morning. So you can see the moisture will be heaviest in the northern areas. Now there is going to be on the southern base of the trough, in this area here, there is going to be a little bit of shower activity, maybe a couple of isolated thunderstorms as we get into Saturday night, Sunday. They're just not going to amount to much, but there probably is going to be more showers in that area than it's showing, but we're just talking about showers, nothing that's going to be widespread or consistent. Temperatures, though, by noon Sunday really tank, and by Monday, the colder air spreads over and along and east of the divide. So after some very warm weather Thursday through Saturday, Sunday and Monday, and probably in the Tuesday, will be quite a bit colder. So we're pretty confident that between now and next Tuesday, this is how things shape up. It's after that time frame where we're going to have some differences in the models. And every model suite, the European, the Canadian, the GFS, the other models that we look at, all have a different story once we get beyond Tuesday. A lot of that has to do with the changing seasons. The time of year when we transition from one season to another, there's a lot going on, and it's a lot for the models to pick up on. One thing you got to remember about models, they always start with an initial set of conditions. And over time, each forecast is made based on the forecast that was made before it. So you only have one set of measured data. So what happens over time is, that's why forecasts over time, the further out, become more inaccurate. But all of these models are basically initialized with the same set of data. They all just kind of, the way they assess the information is different between them. But over time, one error becomes a bigger error. So just one small error 5 days into the forecast becomes a huge error, as we get into the 10-day forecast. So what I want to show you is the middle to the end of next week and as we look ahead into Easter weekend. So the European model shows a winter-like cold front pushing through the area by next Wednesday and Thursday, kind of similar to what's going to happen this weekend. It's along the Canadian border. It drags a cold front through. The air behind it's pretty darn cold for the middle to the end of next week, with a little bit of a cutoff low over the southwestern United States. Basically, this would be just a fast-moving front, not very moist, but it would certainly drop temperatures again. So you take a look at that and say, okay, that makes sense. There's really nothing crazy about this solution, although it looks more like a January or February solution as opposed to an early spring solution. The artificial intelligence, the AI version of the European, and I took the lows and highs out of this graphic to make it a little bit easier to see. What I want you to notice is the structure, where the troughs are and where the ridges are. So this would be a ridge, this would be a ridge, and then these would be, the troughs would be where the lows are. So the AI version looks like this. Notice there's no front in southern Canada, no low in southern Canada. Actually, next Wednesday and Thursday has a high pressure ridge over the Central Rockies. So I'm going to draw a line here. So the ridge is in the AI. The same line here, roughly, is a trough. Trough here, ridge here. This may not seem like a lot visually, but I will tell you it makes a huge difference in terms of how the weather will unfold once we get to 7, 10 to 14 days away, because the weather will behave differently if it's this solution compared to this one, especially Easter weekend, as you'll see here in a moment. So the AI is trying to learn from previous weather patterns going back from the late 1940s to present on what's happened historically and interface that with the deterministic or just the straight model solution. So the AI is kind of going, I don't see that. Historically, this doesn't really match up with what you're saying. This does. And then if we go out further, this is Easter weekend. Easter weekend on the European deterministic model just shows a straight zonal flow across the U.S. This is basically no weather at all, barely any. A cutoff low over Mexico, but a lot of the U.S. Easter weekend mild and dry, mostly dry, because of the west to east flow across the U.S., which brings Pacific air across the nation. So an Easter weekend where there's barely any weather whatsoever. The AI says, no, we're going to bring in a trough coming in rather strongly as we get into Easter morning, this Sunday after this one, with a high building in the Gulf of Alaska. And if that happens, then we have a broad trough forming. So do we have a big western trough Easter weekend, or do we have this? If you take this for face value, no. If you take this for face value, yes. Not very helpful. That's why I'm not really going past next Tuesday's forecast with any amount of certainty. So this is a little bit of inside baseball in terms of what we're seeing. And remember, your forecast on your phone or your favorite app, your favorite website is going to be based on this solution, not this one. Now let's go a little further out. Let's go out to 15 days. 15 days out, not much excitement on the European model here at the end of April. The end of April should be cooler, more wet, more active. The European really doesn't show that. The AI shows the development of a cutoff low in the western United States, which would be a wet signal, a much cooler signal, and something that's, well, we've seen more frequently in the past instead of this. So is this AI or is this AI confusion? Time will tell. That's the beauty about the weather. Time will tell, and we'll kind of keep score and see how this ends up looking like 7 to 14 days out, because that's when most of our weather, if it does happen, will occur. And it will be interesting to see if the AI sniffs this out or not. Have yourself a good Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow.